And now I'm going to talk about man.
No, I can't put that. I can't put that in the start because it's a swear.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So,
You found the hole for this. You can now get away with saying anything as long as you swear.
until you learn how to believe part of what I say, and then you can. So
That's an interesting thing. I could just take a whole sentence that you're saying like normal stuff and just bleep every second word.
it only has like one pipe going in and one pipe going out.
Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is the Drunk Duck Quackcast. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Tanserine, who cannot be seen.
I've been waving. I waved at our Patreon video, and now I waved again to the ethers as unseen, completely unseen.
To the
But now you know
invisible
what to
watchers.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the invisible watchers. Yes, we're not videotaping these Quackcasts. Unfortunately, people, you don't get to see what we look like unless you become a patron. And, then you can see the little videos we do all the time, which is quite cool, in addition to the Quackcast. But this week you can listen to us chatting about the pitfalls of learning how to draw and write. The two main things that you need to learn how to do in order to do webcomics. There are other skills you need to learn to do, but these are the two main ones. Drawing and writing. Depending on what you're doing. Alright. Pitface and Baines are not with us at the moment because they're doing mysterious American stuff, North American stuff. So, whatever. So, I'm going to bring up the featured comic now. And the featured comic for this week was Fat Man. So, I'm going to talk about that now. My feature for the week was Fat Man. Fat Man is a rather acerbic fellow, but he has an interesting, if simplistically surreal take on the world. Naked in profile or portrait, he blesses us with his pearls of precious wisdom. Truly, he is a prophet for our age. The art is all simple line art with a lot of copy and pasted elements because that's part of the style of these surreal humor comics. This is a funny and intelligent comic strip. There is some nudity and adult themes, but it's quite stylized and non-sexy. This is just a funny, humorous, weird comic that makes fun of, the humor comes out of the weird, funny, silly situations, or the weirdness of it, the surrealness of the situation is where the comedy comes from. So I hope you enjoy having a little bit of a look at Fat Man. They're comic strips, and there's not that many of them, so you'll be able to catch up very quickly. It's not like there's a story or anything. They're just sort of observational humor, or sort of almost philosophical humor. I hope you find it funny. And it's by Jojo Jar Jar Jar, and it's rated M. And that was the featured comic. It was Fat Man. I hope I'm enunciating that correctly, so there's errors or anything. Okay, so next up we have the featured music. Gumballs has given us a theme to a little comic called Necro Oblivion, which was a comic I featured the other day. So thank you very much for that, Gumballs. Following my lead there, as I often follow yours. Necro Oblivion, the raw, buzzing fuzz of distorted electric guitar over calm, almost celebratory rhythm-driven music brings to mind the sounds of North African Tuareg band Tinariwen. This is quite a positive vibe and a very North African sound. So take it away, Gun Wallace, with the theme to Necro Oblivion. was the featured music to Necro Oblivion by Gum Wallace, which is, a nice Tuareg sound. And Necro Oblivion is, of course, a comic by Paneltastic, which I featured the other week. So I hope you, if you haven't had a look at it and had a read, I hope you do get into it, because it's quite a cool, fun, comedy, cheeky, sexy comic. So enjoy. All right, learning how to draw and learning how to write, and bad teachers who teach you stupid, bad, dumb lessons. This is quite par for the course for creators, isn't it? We're assailed by these terrible people who reckon they're telling us, teaching us how to draw or write, and they're often giving us bad advice.
Or no advice.
Yeah, the two-step unicorn method.
Yeah.
It's how to draw horses.
Yeah. Exactly. It's or they give advice that doesn't make sense, and I don't know. Especially there were a lot of books in the 80s. Like growing up, I remember a lot of books that were quote unquote teaching you how to draw, like Mickey Mouse or an anime character, or teaching you how to draw cartoons, and they never really went at it in a normal way. They went at it through shortcuts, like draw 2 circles.
Yes.
And then draw 2 cubes. But that doesn't really give you like a grasp on the logic of any kind of form, and then how you stylize a form or any of that. So you ended up being able to basically be a human stamp in the sense that you created the same thing over and over, very, very little variation, because that was the only thing you knew how to sketch. Drawing yourself.
It teaches you how to copy. And you have these kids, I remember, that they say, I could draw, or these adults, and they just draw the same thing every single time. They know how to draw a thing. And it was a bit embarrassing. It's like learning, someone who can play music, but they can only play one tune, which is fair enough. You can get by on that. But you can't get by on drawing one thing. That's not.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, I was able to draw only a single type of house from a very specific angle, and it was like a 3/4 angle, and with some perspective I couldn't understand why it was the way it was. So I could only draw that house. Period. That was it. That was the house. And I could only draw one type of princess, and that was the princess. The only variation was what decoration went on her poofy dress, and that was it. And after a while, I could also draw like very stylized letters in a very specific way. I don't know if you guys had, in Greece we had the whole smile on an island thing. It was a very specific S that you drew with 2 rows of 3 lines, and then you connected those lines in very specific ways, and then you drew the rest of the thing. I'm going to just sketch it right now. And you can take a snapshot if you like. And some people, it might bring back memories to some people. But that was the only thing anyone and everyone could draw back when I was growing up in the 80s. So
it sounds like how people used to draw cowboy hats. they would do a certain kind of, like an S kind of shape, and then they'd connect them up, and that would be the cowboy hat. And it would look pretty good, but they wouldn't really know how to draw a cowboy hat. They'd just know how to do the shape. Oh, okay. Let me just screenshot that. So what is that for? Is that like a logo or something?
I have no idea, but every kid was drawing this. And if you wanted to become really fancy, you also make the island like this.
Yeah.
And the whole fancy stuff was the S.
Yeah.
Everyone else do the other letters, and the L was always a pine tree, not a pine tree,
Palm tree.
a palm tree, and everything else was up to you. And everyone was drawing it everywhere, and that was like the extent of our creative education.
Just repeating graffiti. Well, that's another thing. Kids who do graffiti, there's a huge gulf between ones who can actually draw it and ones who just copy, tags or do a scribble of their name, and they look at it and they think, oh my god, this is my little bit of creativeness, my scribble.
Yeah.
And it's pathetic. It's sad what they're doing.
I wouldn't call it pathetic. I would call it sad in the sense that these people want to be creative and they are not given the tools to be creative, actually be creative and satisfy this need for creativity, in my opinion. Unless they just want to deface stuff, that's a different need. That needs a different kind of treatment.
Versus more creative graffiti, where people sort of, like your little image there, but if you had, that was an original creation, rather, instead these people don't even have the ability to do even that. It's just a doctor's signature, pretty much, and that's all they're doing. It's rather than the more creative, like graffiti, which can look quite interesting. But even so much of that is just copied elements that are reproduced over and over, and they call it a tag, but it's not a tag. It's your little kiddie thing, your 3/4 house, and that's all you know how to do, and that's what they're.
Yeah, and I think like up to an age, maybe that is okay, but the problem is that often, in a more elaborate ways, it carries over into being quote unquote taught art and being taught writing, creative writing. And I have seen that a lot as a teacher of creative writing, because I do teach that. I teach creative writing, and people come to me with these weird preconceptions that have no basis on any kind of like a reasoning even. I remember very specifically there was this one person, I will not even say the gender, because I'm not sure that they might actually be listening. So there was this person that felt that every single novel should begin with a flashback.
Oh dear me.
And if you cannot do a flashback, then you are not creative enough. I have no idea where that came from, and they couldn't tell me either, or they wouldn't, I don't know. But the thing is that when you get those kinds of preconceptions, you get, first of all, you get boxed in, and you will not be able to create something that really comes from within and really satisfies you, because starting with a flashback might work with, for certain stories and as a tool to show certain things, but it will not always work. It's a simple. And it was something so specific. Like, we have to start with a flashback, and I said, why? Why do you need a flashback? Why do you need a flashback? Because that's how important books start. And I was like, so important book. So anyway, that was a fun experience. I wish I had recorded that just for the dialogue. But yeah, and those, of course, these are the results of people either teaching things wrongly or projecting things onto people that are trying to find their way, and they are misled, like dreadfully misled.
And it distorts them. It gives them very bad information to work off of. It just reminded me of, when you're saying, they think that's how a good novel starts, so they're using that, stylistic thing in order to begin. It reminds me of people who don't know about fashion or personal style, which is a different subject, but it's like related in that aspect. It's that
we're a creative thing.
So yeah, they think like, and it's become a thing. So people wear like Chanel, like a huge brand across their chest, and they think, oh, I've got Chanel on here. Like, I've got this shitty tracksuit with Chanel written across here, so I must be stylish. I must be looking cool. But style isn't about the brand. That's like, starting your story off with a bloody flashback no matter what. Style is about very, very different things. The branding is nothing to do with the style, you idiots. So that's
exactly. And there is I think that there are two kinds of bad teachers: malicious ones, people that really are out to, and I have seen those teachers. That's why I'm saying that they exist. People that are either are like very insecure and they want to basically break anyone that might potentially upstage them in anything. So there's that kind of teacher that is going to basically not teach you, but make sure that you feel inferior, insecure, and unable to navigate the creative process, whatever that process is about. And the ignorant teacher, the person that just doesn't know how to teach. It's as simple as that. And they will just not be able to get across information on how to do things. And they are both terrible. It's just that the one is knowingly toxic and the other one is unknowingly toxic. Yeah. They are both toxic because they end up feeling you like you don't have talent, feeling you, okay, that was very Greek. Yeah. They end up making you feel that you have talent, that you don't have capacity, and that you shouldn't actually be dabbling in this particular creative field that you are dabbling in. Yeah,
I know.
So there's that.
As when I was, learning art, well, not learning art, but doing art classes in school, because that was where my passions lay. So I wanted to take classes so I would get a chance to do more of what I loved. Now, there were bad teachers in arts, of course, as you would have encountered many of them, I suppose. Everyone encounters crappy art teachers. And the bad ones were the ones who wanted to direct your work. So if you drew in a particular way, they would, go, oh, it's my responsibility to, interfere in this process and to say, no, try this instead. No, try this. No, do it this way. So it would be imposing their own ideas and forcing you to go along with what they would do for that thing. So they were shitty, terrible teachers. No fucking idea what they're doing. The good art teachers were the ones who saw what you were doing and tried to help you achieve it. So they were the ones who saw, oh, you wanting to draw this person? I'll give you a bit of a hint and some advice on how to do that better and how to do that pose better. Whereas the shitty teachers would just go, why don't you do it this way instead? That's
and it's not only like the good art teacher basically guides you into what to look at, what to pay attention to, what you should be converting into art from what you see around you and stuff like that, and giving you tools to create rather than grabbing your hand and just forcing you to create in the way they are creating. So yeah,
just
there's that.
Negative. I remember when I was teaching and digital animation, so I taught that at a tertiary college for a while, and my strategy, instead of going by the the recommended lesson plan. So the recommended lesson plan was like, okay, now we're going to do working out how to do a walking thing. So these are the templates, and this is how you go through step by step in order to replicate this person walking, and that's how you're meant to do it. And that's fair enough in order to teach people how to better use the tools and how to arrange the items and learn how to use to do animation on a timeline, that kind of thing. That's not a bad way to learn, but after a while that can very quickly become copy this and copy that and copy that, and you don't learn too much. Some people can learn a lot from that. They can go, oh yeah, now I've learned how to use the tools to do this. I can apply that in many different ways, so I can do this thing. A lot of people just can't synthesize knowledge in that way. They learned how to do that, and that's all they know how to do. So the way I was teaching them was saying, okay, so see this creative project here, this end result. I want you, it would be a really, really simple kind of end result. I want you to try and achieve this kind of end result, given, and I'll give them a bit of training about how to, use their timelines and use items and stuff like that. Yeah. But the end result is more the thing. And you can achieve the end result in any way you like, which means they have a little bit more creative freedom, and it gives you, you learn in a more exploratory fashion. So you have to go, okay, so how would I be able to manipulate these tools and you do this in order to get that? But the end result wouldn't be prescriptive. I wouldn't say, look, you have to achieve something that looks exactly like this. That wouldn't be the thing. I would say to achieve something like this rather than exactly. So I was allowing them to use their own creative skills, their own cognizance, in order to do something that was interesting to them, rather than just produce
absolutely
the formula.
And the thing is that that's a very good way to go about teaching people methods, and that gets me to when you have to show them how something is done and when you shouldn't. That's another balance that as a teacher you should have, because, for example, you have to sort of, quote unquote, twist the arm of your student to learn frigging anatomy. You have to learn anatomy. You have to learn how things work with the human body. or any other type of body. Like if you want to create a horse, you have to know horse parts, all of the horse. So you have to actually be very strict in certain things, because that will give the tools for a person to be creative and be able then to translate the human form in the way that best manifests for them. So rather than leave them be, in the grinding stuff, the stuff that actually could be. I mean, for me it was very boring, but for some people could be like the boring stuff. Learn anatomy, learn perspective, learn shading, learn, all of these things that are very specific skills that transcend style, transcend talent, transcend any, all of these things you have to learn. And then instead of, going there and being strict, they are strict on the approach to composition, for example, or not composition even, like the approach to creating a human body, the approach to creating a human face, or, what have you, which is not where you should be strict. That's where the creation and creativity happens. And the same goes for writing. What I have seen is that nobody, when I have seen with bad teaching, because I have also seen a lot of great teachers that do the right thing. I don't want to paint it as like, oh, I know best and everyone else has been terrible at their job. It's just we're just focusing on those people that are terrible at their job, and I think that it is very crucial for people to be able to recognize the patterns and stay the hell away from these people. So in creative writing, what I have seen with bad teachers is that they do not teach the basics, which is how to construct a sentence, how to construct a paragraph first, then how to construct a dramatic sentence, how to construct a dramatic paragraph, those things that are basically the equivalent of shading and anatomy and things like that, like when to use synonyms. Oh my God, the whole thing. Like some manuscripts look like they were created by an AI that had this thesaurus uploaded into its program, and it's really very distracting. Like you have to know when repetition of words is a bad thing and you shouldn't do it, and when repetition of certain words is necessary to focus attention on certain things. Like the biggest example of this is when in dialogue, when do you go with just he said, she said, blah, 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 quote, he said. Now, amateurs will usually, or people that are taught wrong, because there are a lot of self-taught people, okay, but people that are taught wrong usually are told that you can never use he said more than once or twice. You have to say he sighed, he murmured, he cried, or he claimed, But imagine this in your head. This guy talking is changing tones all the frigging time because every single word, even though it's supposed to be a synonym, it's not actually a synonym. It's there for a reason. It has little nuances that are different to the tone, to the enunciation, to all sorts of things that happen in human dialogue. So if you change it, then you are signaling to the reader that there is a slight change in the way the lines are being delivered.
Yeah, it can become unnecessary.
Exactly. It can be very distracting. And if someone has told you something like that as a rule, stay away from that person. Find someone else. So
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated. You got to teach people the basics, and then like stuff that's so nuanced like that, you can't give that to them as rules. But when you were saying like people who do like the overuse of synonyms, stuff like that, it reminded me of I was just reading the other day about Tolkien and the Inklings. You know, that whole writing group that we get together to, you know, to do early fantasy, and they would have like a comedy reading of this particular writer who was famous in the 20s or something. This woman who would she was overly florid in her writing style, and she thought, oh, this is just the best thing ever, you know, this is how everyone should write. And she couldn't understand why everyone thought she was so ridiculous. But her writing is basically, you know, full of that stuff and just massively over the top, like metaphors and symbols, and just not even metaphors and symbols, basically just descriptive kind of stuff. And yeah, maybe metaphors and symbols, like, you know, like the powerful like rock crushed, you know, as a description for a man doing something, you know, it would just like be full on like metaphorical language, and it's too florid and it comes out just stupid. And people have described that as being very much like these writers called the euphemists, which was a style of writing from around Shakespeare's time, just before Shakespeare. And apparently it was then where people discovered symbolism for the first time. They, not for the first time, but they really discovered that, oh my God, we can be really poetic in prose. And, you know, everything can be like in symbolic. We don't have to, you know, be a one-to-one relationship. We could just like totally hammer it and just go for all this kind of poetic language. You know, like my descriptions of Gunn Wallace's theme, how I'll often be a bit more poetic in my style, and that can be a bit, you know, bit too florid and silly. This kind of writing was very much like that, and they were, you know, called euphemists for a reason, which I found was very interesting, you know.
Well, there's another thing. Again, it comes down to how skilled your teacher would be, in the sense that different types of writing match different eras for reasons. Again, there are reasons why certain types of texts look the way they do and were popular, even though, for example, now they wouldn't be able to be, you know, as accepted. And for example, I'll take an example from Greek literature. There was a period like around the 1700s, I would say 1700s, where you couldn't be overtly sexual and be like a prestigious or even mainstream accepted creator. So there was a lot of flowery language and a lot of metaphor going on about the horizontal dance. And that was then it worked. Okay, so you have to understand the context. Again, every piece of art happens within context of its time. So when you teach certain things, and when you teach approaches to writing and approaches to creating visual arts and stuff, you cannot teach this like in vacuum, let's say. It has to be also given within context of why it was the way it was, because again, that is a skill, that is a tool, so that you know why these people did it And if you need to do it, or if your character, for example, needs to do it, then you can also do it. So, so that's the thing. For example, you cannot write like Victor Hugo wrote. Why? Because he was in an era where certain things were expected of books that are not now. Mm-hmm. And you have to respect that. You have to respect certain expectations so that you know which expectations to subvert or expand or push the limits of, and you also still need to know, like all of these people knew the basics that you also have to know. And an excellent example that I often use, even though it's not in writing, is Picasso. Like Picasso knew anatomy very well, and he knew how to say it very well, mm-hmm. way before he started drawing people like a 3-year-old. Yeah. So, yeah, the point is that everyone that has created anything that has withstood the test of time knew the basics, and the basics are taught. And if your teacher is not teaching you the basics, but instead is trying to just teach you a style or teach you an approach or what is popular or what is considered the right way to do things, then they are not a good teacher, because the right way to do things now might be the right way for just like 2020 or the 2020s, and then it will not be.
Oh, yes. So, yeah. That's so important. I mean, I remember when I was just doing my my degree in art, fine art and design. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, when I was doing my art degree, and we were learning, painting and all that kind of stuff, and Jesus, yeah. So I was doing very illustrative kind of work, narrative, almost like in a comic style or whatever, and that was my thing. And I had my lecturers at the university saying, "Oh, you really should be more conceptual in your style. It's too like representational, like the way things are going. It has to be conceptual. That's what it is." And we're sorry, but we really can't give you the marks that that these other students are getting, because you're sticking with this representational stuff, and that's not how fine art is done. I was invited back, to go back there just a couple of years ago to see an exhibition of former students, and this exhibition was full on representational stuff, and it was all comic art, the exact stuff that I had been doing, like when I graduated years and years and years ago, is now being not only celebrated, there was a major exhibition for it. So exactly as you say, that what is right at the moment isn't right forever.
Exactly. And like, for example, in Greek fine arts school, unfortunately, we are going through in my opinion at least, through a bit of an official dark age, at least when it comes to mainstream, because if you don't go mainstream, you have an amazingly diverse and extremely fascinating art scene in Greece. But we're talking now about teachers. So teaching in fine arts school in Greece is going through a phase. In the phase is that everyone can tell who was your teacher by the way you draw things. And that's a bad thing, because that means that your teacher is only teaching you their style. And that consequently, that means either that they are just interested in creating mini-me's, like minions, or they are basically ignorant about the real art, and they only know how to create one single style, and that's what they are teaching. So, yeah.
It's
And
interesting. Oh, go on.
mhm,
Sorry.
mhm.
I was going to
No,
say
no, I said that that a good measure of whether an art teacher is a good teacher is to see what the art their students are producing is like. If it is cookie cutter, same art style, then I would not pick that teacher. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. When I remember when I was back at art school, there were art teachers there who were teaching because they were famous artists, and
Mhm.
you know, as famous artists, it was very easy for them to get the jobs, and it was a way to an alternative way to earn money. So that's why they were teaching there. You know, they were quite famous, you know, well noted in the field. But the problem was they were thinking, oh, I'm a famous artist, so I must teach people the skills that I am famous for, or else why else am I here? Instead, what's the better ones would instead teach you the skills they had become very proficient at, very, very good at. So there was this fellow called Jeremy Kerwin Ward, who was quite a noted painter, and he did acrylic paintings, and very, very, very good, you know, with acrylics. And he was teaching us not just how to paint with acrylics, but to paint with acrylics in his style. And his style was quite, you know, specific to him. It didn't really apply to anyone else. But the useful lessons we got out of him were the skills that he had to learn, you know, to use with acrylics, because acrylics are quite an unforgiving medium. They have a really weird sort of learning curve, in that they can seem to be very easy to master because they dry very quickly, and you know, they're non-toxic, they clean up with water, these kind of things, so they can seem to be very easy to use, but in reality they're incredibly difficult to use. Those kind of easy things make them quite deceptive. You can master that stuff very simply, but to do anything more complicated with them is very, very hard, because they dry too quickly to blend, and they dry very flat. They dry quite matte, they dry transparent, so if you try and paint over something, you see what's underneath. You can't get you can't build up like form very easily because they flatten. So there's a hell of a lot of stuff to learn about acrylics, and he sort of taught us how to get around some of that, and that was the useful stuff. Painting in his style was worthless, but learning how to overcome the difficulties was really important. Whereas, say, versus oil painting can seem quite tricky, because you have to, like, it takes so long to dry, and you know, there's certain things mix with it, certain things don't, that kind of thing. Whereas in reality, oil paintings are like medium difficulty. Once you've gotten past all that, it's freaking easy. But yeah, acrylics like super easy or super, super difficult. So yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, learning in someone's style, not so important, but learning the tricks they had to learn in order to achieve that style, very important. So go on, sorry.
Exactly. So if, for example, if I was the director of an art school, I would hire this guy with a specific rubric of teach them how to work with acrylics, period. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and that would be the description of the class. So even if he taught in his style, everyone would focus on the actual use of acrylics rather than, you know, anything else. So, yeah, the big issue in everything is you have to ask yourself, am I being taught tools, or am I being taught application of tools? Those are very different things. And in the beginning, it might be hard to differentiate but it will become apparent if you find yourself suddenly boxed in the sense that you feel that there are things that you see around you and that you cannot experiment with. You don't feel like you can experiment with very well or at all. So then if that is happening, at least that would be my approach to how to evaluate a teacher. Then that would mean that this teacher is teaching me only a style or only a specific method, rather than giving me the tools to expand afterwards as I develop as an artist. So, of course, again, I'm talking about teachers and not when you are self-taught. That's a whole different animal. But yeah, if you are going with the being taught certain things, go for being taught tools, how specific skills that then you can apply to pretty much anything. Don't learn to draw a meme or don't learn to draw Marvel or DC. Learn to draw humans. And then you can do both if you like.
You need more the basic kind of stuff. That's why when I was teaching animation, I would give them like a finished product to get to, but how they got there, it was, you know, on their own. You know, they would be able to reach that themselves. And it wasn't a finished product, like I was saying before, it wasn't a finished product that you achieve exactly. It was something you would, like an animation with music, something like that, you know, you have to get to there. Because I didn't want to be prescriptive in style and limiting people in how they got to this result. So I wanted them to explore and to be creative in their use of the tools, which is I'm very much you know, even though I did like lots of art classes and things, it wasn't to learn how to do art because I already knew how to do it. So it was more just to give me the chance to play and to be able to draw and also get qualifications in that kind of stuff, you know. But
actually,
I was going to say I had learned through like exploring, and like I'd see a finished result and I'd think, how the hell am I going to achieve that? And that was my learning process, trying to learn the tools or learn how to do the figure drawing or learn how to do architecture or something like that in order to achieve this finished result. So that can be enormously helpful. It's how I learned graphic design, just by doing comics and learning how do you do lettering, how do you do speech bubbles. So I had to learn the programs like Corel Draw and Freehand and Illustrator and stuff like that. I learned all those myself rather than being taught.
That's basically like the self-teaching process a lot. That's how I went about it. Like I did search for some tutorials, at least, and I used also my own logic, because when you are trained to be a teacher, certain methods of teaching are universal, so you apply them to yourself and you can teach yourself certain things. But of course, it is a far slower process with a lot more pitfalls and things like that. But another thing, but that's a different. It has a different charm to it. If I went, and I would at some point, if I ever had the time, money, and energy for it, I would go to art school just to learn more tools that I don't know, and I would feel a lot more confident in the things that I produce, because I am in drawing and webcomics and everything, I am completely self-taught. So it's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, all the time, all the time when I'm doing things. So that's the one thing. Um, but another thing that I would like to underline about toxic teachers, and I see it not only in art, in everything, and I will use an example from cooking because now that we have not now that this past couple of years we have been creating a cookbook, and I have been dabbling a lot on certain ways to make a complete amateur of a cook able to produce a quote unquote difficult dish, because that's a whole lot of prestige in cooking. And what I have noticed a lot in quote unquote teachers that supposedly teach you something difficult and say that, oh, this is a difficult thing, but I'm going to make you do it because like anyone can do it the way I do it. Then implied, if you can't, you are a talentless little bastard. The thing is that they will show you like most of the steps, but they will omit very crucial steps that if you don't know about, there is absolutely no way that you can get to a result. No way.
Yeah.
And like, for example, I remember this one thing about a very specific type of sweetbread in Greece that is supposed to be a very hard thing to make. And the metal of a good housewife in traditional times and the metal of a good cook nowadays is if you can produce this particular sweetbread that is during Easter. Usually it is eaten during Easter, but you know, nowadays we like it and we eat it anyway around the year, but it's an Easter thing. And there are several YouTube videos of how to create the particular sweetbread that are all wrong. It's amazing. They're all wrong. And I can tell you that because I have tried them all and none of them worked. And the reason none of them worked, as eventually I found out together with my mom, because we researched this thing together, is that they omit a very crucial step that will leaven the sweetbread in a way that, like, a very crucial step that will not kill the yeast in the mix. So, because there are very specific ways that you kill the yeast if you don't know how to protect it and how to feed it, because that's how those are the terms for yeast, guys. It's like a living organism. So the thing is, once we learn the skill of how to protect yeast from getting killed, then we could produce sweetbread. It's as simple as that. But they don't do that. What they do is that they show you, and it's very cleverly edited, to show you the main, easy steps, let's say, and then they very quickly gloss over the whole yeast thing, and then they just show you this wonderful big dough that has, tripled in size all of a sudden, and yours doesn't, and you feel a failure, and it's really not your fault. So going back to art, they do the same thing. They don't tell you that, you know what, in order to always have good perspective, you have to have a vanishing point, for example. Okay, this is very, it's not the best example because I'm self-taught, but for me, the vanishing point was a very important thing that I didn't know about. And everything was wonky until I discovered vanishing points, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there are
There's
aspects
that.
like that are just crucial, like figure drawing and rigging
Yeah,
skeletons and the weight of a
exactly.
figure, which is something that people don't take a long time to understand. That the, any pose needs a proper distribution of weight in order to look real, or else it'll look floating or awkward, and that's
Or
very hard to
yeah,
understand.
or like cut out. Yeah, and as an like I'm like my degree is in applied educational psychology, so I am actually a, a super teacher.
Hmm?
uh, anyway, the one thing I have to say, and I will say it as a professional for all kinds of things, is that talent has no impact on your output in the like up until you become at least advanced. All the stages up until becoming advanced is a matter of being properly taught and knowing the tools and developing the skills. It's not a matter of talent. Talent has two elements to it. One is speed, how quickly you acquire the skills or the tools. And after you have acquired them and you have become a professional, you are proficient in those tools. It's how then you advance the field you are in. Whether that is art, whether that is teaching, whether that is uh, chemistry, I don't know. So uh, don't care, don't give any kind of concern on whether you are talented or not, because it won't have any kind of significance except perhaps speed, and that is if you have like a good teacher and not all of those inhibitions we talked about and everything. It has no impact on your output until you become a professional.
Yeah.
So don't be concerned on whether you are talented or not. It has nothing to do with your drawing, really. It has nothing to do with your drawing until it doesn't matter anymore if you are talented to most of the people. So, yes.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, talent isn't really a thing. It's aptitude more than talent, or passion.
Fluency.
Yeah.
It's fluency a lot.
Well, you become more fluent the more you do something, and you do it more because you like it.
Yeah.
And if you like something and you become good at it, then you like it more because you're good at it. So it's like this circle that feeds on itself. Yeah.
Exactly.
But so there's that. But yeah, like you were saying, the whole thing, like teachers skipping like crucial points. And like with cooking, or the biggest thing about cooking is that it's chemistry. Like it's very certain things do certain things because of certain things. You need eggs in cooking. I mean, you don't need eggs, but eggs are used in cooking because they bind stuff, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And people don't explain that. And sugar does a specific thing in cooking, and salt does a specific thing. Milk, all these kind of things, they have purposes. They're not just put in for the sake of it. And when you know why they go in, then you can make all sorts of different things, or you can like replace things with other things, as long as you know why. And creating a meal isn't about following a recipe to the dot. That's only what you do to learn how to make that particular meal. But once you know what all these things can do, or once you've done that meal, and you know, oh, these are the tastes and the textures that this meal is supposed to have in order to be this meal, then you can improvise and add your own things, and you learn how to do it. And art and writing is very much the same as that. People get too caught up in the it's the style rather than how you're meant to achieve this thing. You know, the Bones, like Baines talks about, you know, the hero's journey and reflective characters, all this kind of stuff, and it's really kind of solid basic knowledge, and that's the kind of stuff that can help you work, not like, you know, producing finished Harry Potter, you know, School of
That's a bad example. That's not a good example of writing. But anyway, yeah, that's exactly it. And for example, in cooking, because that is an excellent example, cooking is, in my opinion, a type of art if you approach it that way. And if you learn what its ingredient is there for and what it does, like if you learn the tools, when you read the recipe, you will know if it can work or not without actually trying it. And
Okay.
if you know, like you get a sort of, oh my God, you are so talented. You predict things. It's not predictive. It's just that you know the tools. And that's exactly the same case as is in writing and in art. It's just that you know how things work, so you can not predict as in a crystal ball, but you can just know what the outcome will be because it is stimulus response, because it is action reaction, and you know that this is how things will be when you follow this particular path. So a teacher is supposed to teach you that. That's what you're supposed to learn. So
Exactly. Style and form, that kind of stuff, comes at the end. You know, like, it's not that an amateur isn't allowed to do that. Definitely. Like, I think
the amateur is going to do it anyway. They just will not be able to know it is their style until they reach the level of being able to differentiate and know that, yes, this is my style. Because I have opted to shape it the way I want.
Yeah. But, you know, as an amateur or whatever, as someone wanting to create something, it's really helpful to have that as your, you know, your goal to aim for, because that's the kind of thing you want to be able to do. You know, like, you're an amateur painter and you want to do like a Mona Lisa. That's your goal, and that is fine. Don't expect to be able to jump straight to doing Mona Lisa, but keep that as your goal that you want to reach, and learn how to reach it. But don't just go, oh yeah, exactly. I'm shit until I can produce the Mona Lisa, so I'm just gonna just copy it straight out, trace around, and that's how I'm gonna learn.
If really that's all we want to do, just trace the Mona Lisa and be done with it. Like, project it on a wall and match it, but without knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not really gonna help, but it's more that people want to learn to do something like that.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do that, is to learn how to mix paint and how to sketch figures and how to create, you know, like a scene, like with a foreground and a background and all this kind of stuff. So once you have that as a goal to aim for, that can help you to learn all the things that you need to know in order to get, like, I've had that, like sewing, like I've made all sorts of costumes and hats and things like that, and without knowing how to do all this stuff, but I knew I would look at that like a hat or something like that, and I knew, okay, now I have to learn how to make these things and make these things and make these things in order to make the hat, and I would like take it step by step until I could make the whole thing. And that's enormously helpful, to have that thing that you're wanting to aim for and learn how to produce. And that helps you avoid some of the problems that can happen where people say, oh, you can't, no, if you want to produce that hat in that way, you have to do it this way and this way and this way. see, you don't have to make things in a prescripted way in order to achieve the same result. There's many different ways to achieve that same result. You just have to, go through the basics in order to do that.
And that's how you will also develop your style, because the way that you develop, like the path that you follow to get to the result that you want, basically is your style, in my opinion. And to go back to the cooking metaphor, in Greece there is this turn of phrase that every cook has his or her own hand, in the sense that they may create the exact same dish, but you will know it will have a slightly different taste that is specific to the cook that made it. And that is not a problem. They are both very tasty versions of the same dish by having followed almost the same recipe. And I say almost because the way we taste things, the way that we let things marinate, like what small choices that we make that appeal to us better is what creates the quote-unquote hand of the cook. And you know that, okay, this was made by, for example, I could tell when she was alive which dish was made by my mom and which one was made by my grandmother. I knew it. I didn't have to have seen them cooking, is what I'm saying. So the same thing goes with style, in that if you want to learn how to paint the Mona Lisa, just parse out the elements that exist in that painting and learn how to do each one of them, and then put it all together, and it will probably not be Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, but it will be yours, and it will be awesome. And it will be a Mona Lisa.
And the other thing that's very important is mistakes. Like, if you're trying to reproduce something, you're trying to go for some effect or whatever, mistakes aren't something to bemoan about and go, I buggered up this thing, I'm useless, I'm crap at doing this, I just can't do it. Every time I try and do it, I mess up. All those mistakes are extremely valuable for learning how to do that thing, because they teach you that I went too far this way, I went too far that way, and it teaches you the consequences of what can happen when you do these things, and that can also teach you other paths in order to do other things, because if you go too far with this thing, you mess up this way. Like I was in cooking, trying to make caramel. Caramel is a deceptively difficult freaking thing to do, because it's very dependent on like the
timing and
caramelization of sugar. And there's a lot of different ways. Like people say, to make caramel you do it this way. No, there's like 5,768,000 different ways to make caramel. It's like there's no freaking way. But if you mess up, it's unrecoverable. Because what happens is that when the sugar burns, it goes through every single aspect of this thing, and it just tastes like burnt sugar, even if it's tiny little bit burnt, and you can taste it. It's terrible. It's very easy for that to happen. But I worked out, if you don't properly, in one of these recipes I was doing, sugar, brown sugar, butter, milk, something like that, maybe condensed milk. If you don't quite get it to caramelize, you get butterscotch instead, which is it gave a whole new different path, and it was even more delicious. So you can have, even though it was a failure, it was still a success in another way. So artwork is like that. All creativity is like that.
The one thing I would say only is that if you feel that you are stuck, you're trying to create something and it always is never the way you want it to be, so it always feels like a mistake, let's put it that way, then input from others will help, assuming that they are not the type of person that will say, ah, ha, ha, this sucks, and just don't draw it this way. If they say that, they are not interested in teaching you, or they don't know how to help you, and they are defending themselves that way by downputting. So, but often when you don't do again and again and again the same thing, if you see that you don't get progress, ask input from others and say, okay, I'm stuck, I don't know how to do this, and this is how I'm doing it and I don't like it. And then a second pair of eyes, or someone that has more experience than you, is going to say, okay, you know what, maybe if you do this or if you do that, it's going to give you what you want as a result. So to get out of a rut, R-U-T, I mean, not the actual rut, is to ask for help from people that you know are going to at least brainstorm with you on how to get out of a situation where you see that you are not improving.
Very much so. Yeah, seek expert advice. That's always a very, very valuable thing to do, and to have a measure of humility too. Don't think you know it all, because that's that can be a bit of a crutch. Well, we should wrap this up because we're over the hour. So thank you very much for listening to podcast number 355. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, and remember that Jason from Halloween or Friday the 13th or whatever is a butt face. A big fat butt face. Okay, on that. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.